Back and forth here in order to try to weave something. In this koan, Bodhidharma brings Zen, brings Buddhism from India to China. He is the living embodiment of the teaching, and he brings it to the emperor in China, who is the living embodiment of a lot of power, and also is very interested in Buddhism. So they're both coming kind of from their own world, see? And they're meeting. Bodhidharma's head is deep into the Dharma, deep into understanding. The emperor's head is deeply into things he can do to support Buddhism. He almost sees it as in a political kind of way. So we walk into each other's worlds. A third world that I'd like to introduce, it's going to be chess, Bodhidharma, and Alice in Wonderland. Is, for those of you who don't know, the tale of Alice in Wonderland is this young English woman who's very proper and falls through a hole in the ground into a place called Wonderland, where nothing is the same. Everything she's been taught is wrong. So, when I was younger, I belonged to two clubs in New York City that are probably the most famous chess clubs in the world, the Manhattan and the Marshall. And I had to go to school an hour away because I went to a special school. And after a while, I was so deep into my chess game that I never made it to school because the train went right by the Marshall. So I'd get out, and I had a key, and I'd go in and play chess all day. And some of the most famous players in the world were there. And I loved it. And it was a whole other world with other rules. Nothing mattered except chess. Nothing mattered. And how important you were was your rating. You have ratings. You know, were you a B player, an A player, expert, master? That was the whole thing. And all this happened in this wonderful kind of bohemian atmosphere. There was so much smoke, you couldn't see. You know, everybody was smoking. It was cigars, cigarettes, pipes. And in this world, it was just like any other world, right? And there was competition. There was the striving for excellence, and that's what I always loved. These people were so dedicated to playing this game. It didn't make any money. It meant nothing. It had no meaning outside this little matrix, see? But this matrix was deeply in everybody's heart that was there. It was the most important thing in the universe. And what does it mean to dedicate yourself so completely to something? Right? What does that mean? See? So, Bodhidharma, who has dedicated himself completely to something, comes to the emperor's place in China. I marked it in the book, so. I always lose my bookmarks on the way over. I don't know how to. Okay. Emperor Wu of Lian asked the great master Bodhidharma, what is the highest meaning of the holy truths? Now, to understand this, the emperor had supported Buddhism in China. And in those days, this was real serious. You know, you shed a lot of blood over different religions. We do it today, too. But it was really like a pastime then, you know, and all the factions would be fighting for what was the dominant religion. And this emperor had put up tons of temples and put a ton of money into Buddhism. And when he asked Bodhidharma, what is the highest meaning of the holy truths, he assumed that he was going to hear something very Buddhist. Now, maybe we're like that too, see? Maybe we come to a place like this on Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and we expect to hear something very Buddhist. We expect to hear something that's within a category of thought. It's kind of like a philosophy. Right? But what he says is, what is the highest meaning of God? In Buddhism, empty without holiness. Empty without holiness. What does that mean? And it probably really pissed him off too. I mean, he's thinking, he's going to hear all this wonderful, stuff like Bodhidharma's going to recite his mantra or something. And he says, empty without holiness. And even though the emperor might have been a little disappointed, he is telling him the central issue in Zen and Buddhism, which is that the teaching is non-conceptual. That the ultimate reality is without concepts. Meaning everything we do, that we move our mind, we create reality. We call that thing out there a tree. We call this thing over here a face. We call this a floor. We call me, I'm Daniel. We call this. And we think that we have, when we've named something and put it into the story of the world as we think we know it, we think we've understood something. And it limits it and makes us, in fact, not understand the most basic thing, that there's nothing to understand and we can't understand it. Now, in that world of non-conceptual, non-understanding, is where you find pleasure and peace and understanding. See, understanding in our practice is not understanding. So Alice, now, back, has fallen through a hole, and everything she says is wrong. She goes to the Mad Hatter's party, and there's a table, and 3 chairs are squinched into one corner, something like this anyway, and she says, "May I sit down?" They say there's no room. And what she finds out eventually is that the rules are just different. They've decided that because it's an ongoing party, they can't move the chairs, so they just move the silverware and the food. And to her, this is unbelievable. And then she says things that are, to her, make plain sense, and everybody is very rude and doesn't answer her. And people say to her, "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" So, we are like that too, see? We all have our own picture of reality, and furthermore, we think our picture is the right one. But everybody has a picture of reality, every single person, and there is no right one. Now, this meeting between Bodhidharma and the emperor is striking at that deepest chord. What if, can we consider this for a moment? What if we're all completely wrong? What if we're not, maybe we're not even like in the category of wrong or right? Maybe there's no such thing. See? We walk around our whole lives looking for the point. What point? Why do you need a point? What's a point? What would you do if you had a point? You'd point it at somebody. That's what people do when they get a point. They say, "I've got the point."